Okay, welcome everybody. I was about to say welcome to this panel, but then I remembered that we said very specifically in the invitation that this is not a panel. So we need to find another word. Welcome to this conversation between four eminent media people about what happens when artificial intelligence meets the newsroom, what that means for ethics, what it means for processes, responsibility, but also public trust in journalism. Before we start, though, sorry to drag you up here and then make you sit there and wait, but before we start, this is the 20th session in Fojo's Knowledge Week, our Kunskapsvecka. This week we've had lectures and seminars about using TikTok for journalism, about science journalism, reporting on organised crime. We had a panel on war reporting. That was a panel, actually. We had a panel on war reporting. And on Tuesday, we had a day about threats against journalism and what that means for the journalist's mental health. In Stockholm, whilst in Malmö, we had a session on social reporting, social reportage. Yesterday, we were over in the World Trade Center for a day's conference about verification and fact-checking. So if anybody here suffers from FOMO, fear of missing out, I'm sorry to trigger you, but we're very glad to have you all here with us tonight. We're going to start with a quick update from the newsroom, what's actually happening now, and then we'll move through ethics and trust and the world around journalism before finishing with a look ahead. So welcome to you, our audience, welcome to everybody online, and welcome to our not panel. Here we have Aimee Rinehart. Aimee, I don't know if you know, but you're on a big screen above us in a very sort of Big Brother style fashion. Aimee is the Senior Product Manager of AI Strategy at Associated Press. We have Caspar, Sweden's Medieombudsmannen. Martin Schori, Deputy Publisher and Director of AI and Innovation at Aftonbladet. And Kristoffer Holt, Professor of Media Communication and Communication at Linnaeus University, of which Fojo is a part. So, Martin, can we begin with you, please? Give us an update. What's Aftonbladet doing with AI in the newsroom today?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's not a very easy one to answer because we're trying to follow what's happening around us, the world around us. We do lots of stuff with the artificial intelligence for the benefit, I would say, for the newsroom and the audience, building chatbots, text-to-speech, all these kind of functions, research. But what's really going on here, I would say, is that when we talk about AI, today we usually talk about generative AI, and when we talk about generative AI, we talk about the things that I was just mentioning, like chatbots and tools that journalists could use. But that's not, that's a part of what's going on, but it's not the big part, I would say, and that's a total different behavior in how people consume content and journalism, a whole new ecosystem of information in the world, and that change is going very fast. The behaviors out there are changing rapidly. I just, for example, saw numbers the other day here that almost 7 out of 10 people in high school are using ChatGPT instead of Google. So they're not only using ChatGPT, they're using it instead of Google, which is a very fast transformation going on. And that affects us in many levels and in many ways.
I think the most public sort of use of AI at Aftonbladet is your Hey Aftonbladet service. You have something like 50,000 questions a day, right?
Yeah.
How's that going? How's that?
Yeah, so that was that is a chatbot on all our content. We did some experiments with more niche chatbots for the elections, and the idea there was to try to see if there's a demand of consuming journalism in that way, and it's pretty clear that it is, I would say, and not for everyone, of course, but using the technology because that's the biggest shift I would say that we see now, is that the internet has gone from, people searching for a link to find something in an article or in a text somewhere, and now we have moved to a total different environment where people are asking questions and getting personalized answers very fast and immediately, and that's what we're trying to do with Hej Aftonbladet.
Yeah, and that will have some big implications, which we can perhaps talk about in a minute.
Sure.
Aimee, you've got a global view through AP. What are the most interesting things you have going on, but also the most interesting things that you're seeing in your customers' newsrooms?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's trying to figure out I'm sorry, there's a weird echo for me. But how are we going to make money from this? Or at least be able to be in business a year from now. So, it's great to experiment, and I think we need to experiment with everything. But right now we're experimenting on tools that have largely stolen most of our data. AP was lucky enough to get a license, but not every newsroom has that luxury. And then we pay for that enterprise service, and then we also hit their servers. So there's a lot of money going out of newsrooms and not enough coming into newsrooms. Again, I don't want to put my head in the sand. We absolutely have to experiment. We need to experiment. I think the smaller the newsroom, the greater the experiments have been. They have more latitude. The larger the newsroom, the more dependencies there are in the system. And I do think, we marvel at what's happening in the Nordic region, and particularly what Martin is doing with Aftonbladet and other places. We really see your corner of the world as leading on most of this. And so a lot of that, has to do with, I think, a very sharing culture, but also a well-resourced newsroom that a lot of newsrooms in the US don't have. I'm not making excuses for the US, just that we're not as far ahead in that realm.
I have a new service which has come out quite recently called AP Intelligence, which has quite a long description. It fills a critical gap in the world's data infrastructure, leveraging the global. Maybe you could tell us what AP Intelligence is.
So I think this is the harder thing to explain about AI, in terms of, like, there is the public web as we know it. And then there is the underlying web that is growing, meaning agentic agents are talking to agents, and machines are reading information or trying to read information online and make sense of it. What AP is offering here as a data layer is to be able to have well-organized data, to talk to those agents, to have that growing. I don't know if it's called I don't know if you've got a word for it, but like a sub layer of the internet that we're slowly moving, maybe not slowly, probably quickly moving into. And so AP is taking advantage of having, producing 5,000 pieces of content a day to be able to keep those systems, to be able to keep things like RAG well-trained and current, but also to feed that underlying layer so agents can talk to other agents.
Thanks. Kristoffer, from a research perspective, are you surprised by the pace at which newsrooms are adopting AI or experimenting with it, either fast or slow?
Not really. I mean, this is a huge technological shift, and as always, it becomes very soon a competition to be the first to adopt the new possibilities and to make money of it, and so on. So I'm not really surprised from a research perspective, but I represent a tradition of research which looks at these kind of technological shifts and tries to ask sort of critical questions about what are the consequences. I've been reading a lot of Neil Postman lately. Neil Postman is a scholar who was an heir to the famous Marshall McLuhan, coiner of the phrase "the medium is the message." And his whole media ecological way of describing these shifts and what they entail for culture, for politics, and for what he calls the human condition so from our perspective, this is kind of what we're trying to find out. How is culture going to change? How is human subjects, how are they going to live in this new world, in the consequences of all of these things that have been described? So I'm not surprised at all. It's kind of inevitable, I think, that this becomes a race to the bottom, I was almost saying, but it's a competition, and you have to do that. It's in the logic.
And what about your own research? Is there a race to the bottom in the research world as well, in the sense that you're all rushing into AI in media research?
Yeah, I wish we spent more time analyzing the structural changes than trying to use it for our own purposes in research. I mean, I don't know, you saw the article in Dagens Nyheter recently about the increase of academic output using AI. So, I mean, we're not so different. We're trying to figure out how to maximize our output and our impact as well. But in my own research, I've been focusing lately on young adults, observing their behavior when they're using their smartphones, specifically to find news. And I can just verify the number that was mentioned earlier, that they're using the chatbots for finding news. They're building up a relationship of trust to the bots, and trust them. Not all of them, it's a small portion, but many young people have already discovered this opportunity, and forming new habits of finding information.
And we can talk a bit more about trust in a bit. But Caspar, from your perspective as Medieombudsman, are you already seeing new ethical or accountability challenges coming into your inbox?
No, actually not.
Okay.
No. So, well,
Yeah.
no, but
why do you think that is?
no, I think that even though AI, of course, is a great revolution and changes everything, still media ethics and the rules and the code that we have it is so basic and such a core value for the established and traditional and trustworthy media, because the code says publish what is correct. Be careful with the victims of crime and accidents. Be balanced. Be careful with people who are not used to being interviewed and so on. So the code is so. I mean, we had the internet revolution. The code stood against everything. We thought that now internet is coming. Should we change the code? Should we change the rules? No, we should keep on publishing what is truth, and we should keep on be careful, and we should keep on, if we do wrongdoings, we should correct them and so on. And that is, I think that's so basic. So I don't think that AI changes the codes or the codes of ethic very much right now, at least.
But does it change the way you measure the content against those codes? Measuring, is this true? Is this transparent, and so on?
Well, I mean, when I get a complaint, for example, I look into if someone is harmed by what is published. If it's an article in Aftonbladet, for example, is someone harmed by what's been published? And I don't care if it's a human being who has written the piece, or if it's a robot, or if it's a AI generated content. I look if someone is harmed and who has done the harm in the process. That's not my concern. My concern is that what is published doesn't harm that person. So I don't think that's any difference really, because the publisher is responsible for what's published, even though it's an AI tool that has published it.
Right. So Aimee, thanks. Aimee, hearing that the sort of start point for the question is harm. If somebody's been harmed. We hear a lot about the kind of the subtle biases built into these into the data that these systems are trained on. Does this, to some extent, make it harder for you to monitor whether your own material is going to be harmful?
Well, I mean, there's a huge amount of risk that I don't think we talk enough about in terms of the commercial models and what their overall goals and aims are, monetarily speaking. Their end user are their shareholders. our end user is an informed public, and those are in conflict. And I think you're going to see it more and more. I mean, people pointed to DeepSeek, the Chinese language model that came out, of like, oh, it doesn't mention Tiananmen Square, and it doesn't, you know, it tells the US to stay in its lane when it comes to Taiwan, and people gasp about that. But, you know, I had a colleague at AP say, look, you know, those are the ones we can see. What about the OpenAI and Gemini? What might they find to be inconvenient truths or impolite, as it were, that journalists maybe would kind of take head on? So I think we put ourselves at enormous risk by using commercial models, especially when, you know, the U.S. government has recently said that it would only work with commercial models that weren't woke, whatever that means. So, you know, if we want to debate whether the 2020 election was actually won by Joe Biden, that is something that I think we could see. And again, it might not be as insidious as that, as corrupt as that, but we are leaning into a place where you know, these the impoliteness or the sycophantic nature of these chatbots really is misaligned with our objectives as journalists.
Sorry, apparently I was muted, and I'm not even next to my computer. What do you do about that? I mean, what is AP, as you know, biggest news agency in the world? How are you taking responsibility for that?
Well, AP is not using it to write articles or to support the writing of articles in any way. So we have very strong lanes when it comes to that. Separate to my work at AP, I am working with you know, a coalition of newsrooms to look at what it would take, built on the research that I did last year, what it would take to be to work together to create a small language model for journalism, for journalistic tasks specifically. So that is something that I would like to test out. I need to get to the end of the road on that in terms of, is it better? Does it perform journalistic tasks in a more authoritative way? I think most journalists kind of hold their nose at using commercial models that cannot answer a fundamental principle of journalism, which is, who is your source? And in this case, you know, what is your source? We're not the only one, I'm not the only one thinking about this. I know Norway is working on a small language model, as well as an organization in Chile is working on LATAM GPT. And again, trying to, for their purposes, they just want to see themselves reflected and represented in the outputs, because right now it feels very white, Western, North American to them. And so they want better representation. And I think, you know, the news industry at large could also see that as well, is that they want to see things reflected back to them that really uphold the values of journalism and also reflect the audiences they serve.
Martin, the way that Aftonbladet is using these systems in relation to what Aimee was just saying. I mean, do you feel that there's a risk of being manipulated, a risk that the content is going to be manipulated even subtly by the models themselves?
Yes, I think, I mean, bias is a real thing, definitely, since these models are kind of reflecting society, since they like stole everything in society. So yes, but I think it's Caspar kind of almost killed this discussion, which I think is good.
I noticed that.
Yeah, no, but the thing is that because that aligns a lot with the way I see or look at AI, and why I think that sometimes it's not even so interesting to talk about AI, and that's what he said. That everything we publish, we're responsible for. Almost end of the line. Then you can discuss like how should we integrate this in our workflows, blah blah blah. Definitely, but I mean, I don't know if you remember a while ago, a Swedish politician, she had a speech in Almedalen. She said that, you know, this Aftonbladet journalist did this stupid statement and everybody laughed. And it turned out that she never said that because it was a completely made up quote. And what the politician then did was say, oh, it was AI. But I mean, who cares if it was AI or it was your colleague who told you, or you made it up? Like, you said it. And that's the way I think we should approach AI and like the ethics around it. Like, whatever we publish, we're responsible for. It doesn't matter if it's you know, what the source is or who wrote it. If it was I or my colleague or a robot or a monkey. Like, it doesn't matter. So I think that's an important point to make.
And that's clear. But so are you saying that essentially you're using AI to make the processes around journalism better? What about making the journalism better?
Yeah, and I think we are making journalism better. For example, with Hey Aftonbladet, which is now nominated to the, you know, big grand journalism prize here, just because it is journalism, it isn't tech. It's a new way of presenting journalism, of consuming journalism, giving all the things that we did way back, give it new life.
Could you just very quickly explain what Hey Aftonbladet
is? It's a chatbot on all our content 3 years back. So you can ask questions about the news cycle. I use it a lot because I'm in a lot of meetings. I go into any given news site, and then there's a story that's been going on the whole day. And since the news feed is so fast now, I don't know what's happening. I don't understand the headlines because I'm a couple of hours back. So just like, what's going on here? It will summarize that for me. So that's what we're doing. But Aimee was also talking about, I mean, I use it a lot for brainstorming, and I think it's usually very good, but it's also a risk since all the ideas and perspectives are biased. So I think there you have to be careful, for example.
You just said that Hey Aftonbladet is journalism, and it's been nominated for the Storyjournalistpriset. Congratulations. I just want to ask a little bit more about that. I saw an interesting talk by the head of AI at The Guardian, who you maybe know, who said that they have fed in 40 years of a certain type of article that they have, which is a kind of a humorous question and answer article that they run it every week. They fed in 40 years of those articles into their AI, and now they give it a theme and it can produce absolutely perfect synthesis of these articles, whatever it is. He said we could use it, nobody would know the difference, but we don't use it because it's not journalism.
Well, that's debatable, I guess, since it's based on journalism. I'm not sure. I'm not super interested either to use AI to produce like articles. I'm not even sure that articles is what we're gonna do in the future. But I think that why I say it's journalism is because when we presented our election chatbots, that it was a lot of people used it. The audience used it a lot. So that we answered hundreds of thousands of questions about elections based on our journalism. But I think it was more presented as a tech product. But for us, it's important that it's journalism because it's based on all our journalism. If you use Hey Aftonbladet, I could almost definitely say that you will never do Ebba Busch and have a fabricated quote.
So, but I suppose from your perspective, it still serves the purposes of journalism.
Yeah, definitely, it makes it better because you can, instead of waiting, if you're the audience and you want to know something about what's going on in the world, instead of waiting for Aftonbladet to write an article about that specific question or a podcast or a video, you can just ask and you get a personalized answer that is composed by maybe it extracts facts from 7 or 8 articles and the podcast, and it will tailor that answer for you.
Thanks. Kristoffer, transparency seems to be key to the way that newsrooms use and present their AI-produced work. Yeah. Do you think it's enough to say AI was used in the production of this content, or is there more that needs to be, do you need to explain the processes behind it? Or do people just not care now?
There's a pragmatic approach to this, and that says, well, you don't have time. Nobody's going to read that anyway. It's not reasonable to expect a thorough explication of all the different layers here. But on the other hand, I think there is a problem with this convolutedness and increasingly black boxing of all the processes that goes into producing journalism. I would argue that journalism itself is not the same thing. I would say that that ontologically we're looking at a different thing, because I mean all these innovations, they always change the things themselves, because it opens up new possibilities, new avenues, things that you would never do before. And for the normal citizen who is looking to orient themselves in society in order to become educated about current events, I think the discussion that we're having in this room would be very difficult to understand. And I think that there is a problem a bit further down the road here, because media accountability is always about human subjectivity and the fact that somebody is responsible. I think for the ordinary person, who is actually responsible? I mean, you might argue that it's the one who owns the thing and has that job. But for the normal person, I don't think it's that obvious. So transparency here becomes or risks becoming a problem, because if the population, are not having this confidence, and it risks eroding trust in the whole media system down the road. So I'm not saying that it does or necessarily will lead to problems, but that's a risk I see there, because if you don't uphold this level of trust from the citizens, the whole system with the Medieombudsmannen kind of defeats itself. It has to be a loop there. Yes.
Absolutely.
No, I believe that AI provides a great opportunity for the traditional trustworthy media to show the audience why they exist and why it's so important. Because I think with AI we get all this, agents and deep fake and disinformation and so on. And here we have news outlets that says, we promise our audience to publish what is true. And we promise them to take responsibility for what we do. And if we do things wrong and bad, we promise to correct it. And we freely admit that to be scrutinized, and we freely admit to publish criticism against ourselves if we do wrongdoings. This kind of responsibility is not very common on internet. I mean, on Flashback or Twitter, or you see no responsibility on Twitter at all. But here we have news outlet that says we're taking responsibility for this. And AI provides a great opportunity for these traditional outlets to show that they stand for something else than all the crap that's out on the internet. Like when the internet came, I worked at Dagens Nyheter around 2009, 2010, when the big internet revolution destroyed the business model for newspapers. And we were standing there, who is going to read a newspaper in this age? Everything is free online. Will we have still have our jobs in 1 or 2 years? We didn't think so. But we survived. And why did we survive? Because we distributed the quality, trustworthiness, truth, fact-checking, responsibility. And I think that will be even more important now. And I think that the media companies have a great opportunity now to take that role as I think people will always want trustworthiness. They will always want media that takes responsibility. So I think the future is good, actually.
Thanks. Aimee, either you were either nodding or the screen was wobbling. Well, hang on. Well, I'm going to round.
Yeah, oh, you're muted again. But I mean, I think this is an enormous opportunity for newsrooms to do what they haven't done historically, and that is make a case for themselves, explain what they do and how they do it. Many people in the public still think journalists pay for articles, or they are paid to do articles by people who they're covering, and this is a great opportunity for us to say what our distinguishing factor is from just the answer machine that the commercial models provide.
Kristoffer, I've heard you talking about the epistemic authority of journalism, the idea that journalism is recognised as a trusted source and has the sort of, has earned the right to be recognised as a trusted source by the public. I mean, that's obviously been challenged. I mean, apart from AI, that's being challenged on multiple fronts. But how does AI affect that in relation to what Caspar was just saying?
Well, again, I think one of the components of this epistemic authority is that there is someone to hold accountable that is clearly recognizable by the audience. And when this becomes more and more unclear and muddied, I think it risks undermining the epistemic authority of journalism as an institution. But I think that's an institution that is changing. Journalism is not going to be the same thing in the future. It will adapt. I'm not a technological determinist, but I think chances are pretty high that things are going to be different. And that will force new discussions about these things. So epistemic authority also relies on the fact that people can recognize journalism as journalism. And today, I don't think, as I said before, it's not reasonable to expect people to sit and actually make sure that it is journalism that they're looking at. They're asking different chatbots, different things. They're collecting pieces of information. They're constructing an image of what is going on in the world. And they build up also relationship to different sources over time. So, for example, news influencers is a new thing that is coming strongly. Probably you've all heard about it. When I talk to the young adults in my studies, I've sat down with over 70 of them by now. So they explain this. Okay, why do you trust a news influencer on TikTok? Well, this is someone who I've listened to for 2 or 3 years. Maybe it's not always true or 100% correct, but on the general, I trust this guy to make an honest attempt to explain things from his or her perspective. And that kind of trust takes time to build up. And so that's a new way of doing journalism. And also that's connected to algorithmic distribution systems and all of that. So I think a lot of things are in flux, and we shouldn't take it for granted that journalism is the same thing and people are still gonna know what it is even.
Martin, yeah, sure, just go ahead.
No, but I think the issue of trust is very interesting because for us journalists, it's almost like the only way to have someone's trust is to be totally impartial, objective, but that's not true anymore, or if it ever was. I don't know, I don't think so. So I think that's it's an interesting example is Expressen hired someone from Dagens ETC, which is a left-wing paper. That journalist is clearly has left-wing political views, but people trust that person because he will investigate all the different political parties, but they know where they have him, so to speak, but they trust him anyway. And I think that challenges a lot in our in our world, so to speak. And also I think that we talk about AI and trust a lot. I think that and I also think that this need for transparency, if there is one now, is going to go away. I don't think that's going to be so important because as Caspar again was talking about, like we're responsible for what we publish. And I don't believe in the idea of like separating content. Like we're absolutely responsible for this and this a little bit less because we had some AI in it. I don't think that's the way to move forward. But I do think that what's very bad for trust is not to use technology to become more relevant for people, to not present them with our news in a way that's easy to access, and just keep on writing long articles about everything. I think that's going to be very bad for trust, actually, and maybe even worse than using AI.
You said at the beginning that people trust what's completely impartial and transparent in a sort of ironic way. I mean, as is well established, people tend to trust what makes them feel right, or what confirms their opinions. Is there a risk that AI accelerates that by speaking to them in a far more personal, confirming way than we've ever been used to?
Could be, but there's also, I mean, we just did a project within Schibsted. We have an innovation lab about news creators, as you were talking about, and very interesting. You could also see that what builds trust is that, especially among young people, is that if you're open to change your opinions, if you want to more reason about different subjects rather than have this super strong opinion, and you will never change that erodes trust. So I also think that, and that's something that I know that there's a lot of discussion about that, and there's also some research that I've also seen that, and especially when people want to pay for something, they want to pay someone who shares their opinions or their worldview. But it's a very complex subject. And I can also think that, and we can also see a lot of that. That if you are, as sometimes the opinion pages in a newspaper, they're all, they push their agenda every day, and also in the headlines can be very hard, and I think that's maybe not. It's not necessarily the way forward.
Aimee, AP has a slightly different relationship in the sense with its clients to what, for example, Aftonbladet has with its audience. How does trust figure in your thinking and discussions with your partners?
Yeah, well, we have AP is a not-for-profit cooperative, and our shareholders are our members, and our members have expressed not wanting generative AI in their articles and in the work that we send to them, and so there's a real careful balance of being able to innovate and move forward while also abiding by that trust component with our members and customers. And I think what they're paying for is human-created information. That said, in 2013, 2014, AP really pioneered what I call baby AI with natural language generation around its earnings reports. And these are not award-winning articles. They are news briefs around business earnings. We went from producing 300 by hand and human to 3,000 articles or news briefs to share. But in terms of transparency and trust, at the tagline below all of the articles, it explains the third party that we used to create this. In this case, it was Automated Insights, and the data set that we used, which was from the stock exchange. And so we felt like we were able to give our members and customers even more information while using a template style version of very early AI, and the templates drawn up by our business editors, and then later our sports editors when we did minor league baseball scores. The Washington Post has done something similar with Heliograph, and that does, I think it's high school sports. And then the Los Angeles Times has EarthquakeBot, and also both of those, the Washington Post and the LA Times, have a tagline that explains that this is created by a templatized style of information.
Could I ask Aimee a question real quick?
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted, because one of my friends, she was on a road trip in the US, and she was driving, and her boyfriend said, I'm going to sleep now. Could you please turn on the self-driving function, because I don't trust you driving. And I can hear that in the newsroom a lot now, that like, did you fact check this, that the AI did? And do you think that and your clients, they want that, you say they want, do you think that we're soon or at any time soon going to be in, when we have the AI fact check, it becomes so good that it's more reliable than humans, and the demand will shift?
I don't know. There's some trust issues going on with your friend in that relationship in terms of driving the self-driving car. But I think there's the trust issues going on too in newsrooms, right? I don't know if people are going to assume fact checking is going to be completely unbiased. And I think the more transparent we can be about our own what we lean into in terms of fact and truth and how we communicate that is going to be, the distinction between what we do and how we think about information that we distribute and what the big tech companies are doing. The big tech companies released these chatbots as basically in beta test, and we are the people who are beta testing it on a daily basis. They were not really ready in a way that journalism would feel comfortable with to be out there in the public. So they are doing something. We are the experiment that they're working on, and that is not how journalism operates. So I think we need to be very careful with how we distribute that information and to be clear about it with our audiences. Did that sort of answer your question?
Caspar, who's responsible for educating audiences about AI's role in journalism? Is it the newsrooms, or is it schools, or is it Kristoffer? Yeah.
I think that the newsrooms have a great responsibility of being transparent and tell their audience what they're for. And for example, I think of all those clips from Gaza, which we didn't know were they right, were they wrong, were they deep fake, or were they taken some completely other place. I saw some newspapers that promised their audience, for example, that we won't publish this clip if we're not 100% sure that it is a real clip from Gaza. And we promise to invest. We have experts on our editorial department who are expert on fact checking, and they will check it. And if they succeed and they can establish that the clip is correct, we will publish it. If we fail to establish the source, if it's correct, we won't publish it. And that is kind of quite simple, I think, for the media outlets to do that job. Still, I think that the schools in Sweden are great with what's källkritik in English? Source criticism. Yeah. Source criticism. I mean, I have 3 kids. They are great. I mean, sometimes we think that our audience are dumber than they are. I think if you look at the Örebro massacre that was this spring, I think people tend to go to flashback to check who is the murderer and what has happened, and they want to see pictures. But when they want the truth and what really happened and put it in context, they go to Aftonbladet and Dagens Nyheter and Svenska Dagbladet. I think the kids today, we are so worried, they're on TikTok, they don't get the right information. If I talk to my kids, they know that TikTok isn't the truth. But we have TikTok for entertainment and so on. If we want to fact check, we fact check. And we go to other sources. I think it's a little bit more simple than we sometimes make it.
Interesting. Kristoffer, do you have a view on that?
I can just confirm, because this is the picture I get too when I talk to the young adults. I mean, don't fret so much, but these guys are often have developed their own strategies. And in media research, we talk about uses and gratifications of media use. And you use different products for different purposes. You want to satisfy different needs that you have. And TikTok serves many purposes. And so, it's a pattern that I can see in my interviews as well with the young. Yeah.
I think that they know that ChatGPT isn't the answer to everything. They use ChatGPT, of course, but they know that everything is not correct at ChatGPT. And they're not so dumb as we sometimes think.
Not as dumb as we are.
As we are.
Kristoffer, yeah. Sorry about the
I think that's also a fundamental thing, because I'm also a leader of a research center called Question Democracy. And for me, what you touched upon with human subjectivity and can we trust human subjects to do tasks properly? This is a really interesting question. Do we trust the audience? What about voting? Maybe they vote for the wrong candidate. I mean, should we even let them vote? We have to have this human-centered perspective in all of this, and trust people to be capable as subjects, as democratic subjects, even if they're young and so on. Of course, we should do all we can to prepare them, but there is this tendency to maybe exaggerate some of the fears and expect them to materialize just because there is a possibility. So I would just like to agree with that perspective.
Let's talk a bit about the ecosystem around journalism, the business model, essentially. Aimee, we've seen this pattern before. Google News completely transformed discovery in 2002, and now ChatGPT and the rest of them are transforming it again. I mean, it feels like we're seeing the next great change in who controls the gateway to news. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't even have to look far, right? The Danish media is completely blocked from outputs in OpenAI because they have blocked access to their data. So if you ask a question about something in Denmark, you're not going to get a Danish media company responding to it. And I worry about that, that it is going to become a pay to play to be able to be recognized and to be visible. I think that's why AP Intelligence, the product we launched last week around that data organization and sorting, is one way that a large company like AP can make itself more visible to these, and also, participating in these partnerships that the technology companies have. But I really worry about visibility, and you can see it. I mean, I see it in action in New York City. If I'm like, oh, if I'm walking around Midtown, where can I go get something to eat? And you open up your Google Maps or Apple Maps, and up pops, half a dozen Subway sandwich shops, right? And that's a big franchise in the United States. And it's clear that Subway has paid for the pleasure of being recognized in your app. And so I just worry about the day that we're all kind of, eating Subway sandwiches instead of actually going to places that maybe didn't pay, but still might be of interest to you. So I think we really have to be cautious about the recommendations that it's making, and how it's those recommendations and that visibility is being played out in these chat environments.
Martin, Schibsted signed a deal with OpenAI earlier this year. Can you tell us about that? What was the deal?
Yeah, and I think that's what Aimee was talking about a lot. That I wasn't responsible in any way for this deal, although I do support it. So that's not why I'm saying it. But I think that Schibsted, we felt that we have to do large investments in this new technology. We don't have the money for that, and this was a way of getting the money that we could use to invest in AI projects. What we also get from OpenAI is, except the money, is also data, so we can see, and we have. So we can see what are people, how do they interact with ChatGPT to get news, and what's the type of content that engages and what doesn't. Then it's important to say that as of today, it's a very small source for news. I mean, I think we just released numbers. We have had like 85,000 page views from ChatGPTs. And we have 32 million every day on Aftonbladet, so it's nothing. So it's not a big source of traffic yet, or if it will ever be. But what they're doing now, ChatGPT, for example, and OpenAI, is they're trying to create their own little, internet environment. So where you never leave it. So they add different apps into ChatGPT, so you can perform all your tasks there. You can, make reservations for, not for Subway, but for other types of restaurants and trips. And maybe, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon because it's probably not that interesting to them. But news outlets will probably be let in that environment as well. And I guess that will open also a new stream of revenue for those selected few, I guess.
You said that you get out of this deal, you get money and data, but you didn't say what you're giving them.
We control the content that we give to them, so we send them our content, basically. Not all of it, but a lot of it.
So you're sending them their content, and you say you only get 85,000 clicks. I mean, is that not the problem?
That's a problem, yeah, definitely. And that's also why this deal it's a 2-year deal. So the partnerships ends after that. This is an experimentation. Ships, the ones who did, I mean, Siv and all the CEO of Schibsted, she has also said that, you know, this is a risk. This is not something that we did. This was not, you know. There are risks with this, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at ChatGPT as probably the fastest growing brand loyalty engine in history, maybe they only need 2 years.
Maybe, yeah, true. Yeah, they only.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Kristoffer, follow up on the media ecosystem and the fact that these companies are now Schibsted and so on are signing deals with OpenAI. Is that, you know, you can maybe see the short-term logic, but what about the long-term logic?
I think it's hugely problematic, actually, the way that the whole world of media is now owned by bigger and bigger companies, and they're also above nation-state level. So when we're talking about accountability, you know, who is going to report them, and it has become a problem when we see very destructive tendencies to hold these giants accountable. This is a world, I think, we need to find some way of dealing with that. One interesting example, I think, is what's going on in Australia right now. An attempt to kind of push the platforms to make sure that they have age verification systems so that, you know, to protect the children from harmful content and so on. I've heard reports, and probably it's not going to work that well. Probably it's not going to be successful. But I think that whole way of trying to find ways of holding the giants accountable is really necessary, because as it is now, there's a kind of defeatism spreading. People are kind of just giving up. All right, I have to use these platforms, otherwise I won't get any news. I'm forced to do that. I am forced to give them all my data. I am forced to sort of live with these conditions. And so it could be a bit problematic in trust-related issues when also the journalistic money-making companies sign these kind of deals. Yeah, I'm glad to hear.
Yeah.
No, I just want to add why it was so controversial when Schibsted did that deal with ChatGPT, because I think the Swedish media business has been have had a united front against the big tech companies from Silicon Valley, and not at least Schibsted has been very, very keen on keeping that wall. And the strategy has been not to let them in and not to let them take the content. And then Schibsted did this deal behind the backs of the others. I'm neutral in this. I don't know if it's right or wrong, so I don't want to. I just want to explain why it was so controversial. And Bonnier went crazy, and there's still a big row about this in the Swedish media business. So, should you go to bed with the devil or not? Yeah. I mean, that's a big debate about it still.
And Martin, what did the journalists themselves have to say about this?
At Aftonbladet?
Yeah.
I think it's not a lot. In general, the issue around generative AI is people, ever since ChatGPT launched and this kind of whole revolution started, there has been a small part that's been very engaged and wanted to, you know, be a part of all this exploring and experimenting. A small part that has been against, that this is like a clear resistance. And then there's the vast majority who are just not super engaged and or they don't care that much, actually. And I think that's exactly also what happened when we signed this deal, actually.
Caspar, at the beginning, you were very clear about how responsibility for harm is established. But what happens now when Aftonbladet is signing the deals with OpenAI, and OpenAI starts to produce the content and maybe tweaks it a little bit, and someone gets harmed there? Who do you go after then?
I don't think that Aftonbladet will let ChatGPT just publish things on Aftonbladet. That you will manage it to care for it. I believe. And if Aftonbladet publishes things from ChatGPT that are false or harming or damaging for someone, Aftonbladet's publisher will be responsible for it. So that's why I don't think you will do it. Not without control.
I mean, we do. There's a question of where this like human in the loop comes in, because in terms of hey Aftonbladet, there is not an editor or a journalist who kind of so, but we have a lot of humans in the loop before with the prompting and everything. But do you think that, I mean, if I type something in ChatGPT or any other chatbot, maybe hey Aftonbladet, I hope not, but you will get something that is damaging. I guess that they also, when it comes to press ethics, there needs to be a part with that there's a spread, like and that's not the case, right?
No, I think, was it the case with Hey Aftonbladet where the guy had asked something and he got to know that he was a rapist? Do you know about that?
ChatGPT.
Was ChatGPT? Okay, so there was some kind of Hey Aftonbladet thing where someone. I got a question from Medieombudsmannen about this. Asked a question, and he got told that he was a rapist. He wasn't. So he was like, "Oh, this is so damaging for me," which it of course was in one kind of way, but in another kind of way, it was only he who got the information. It wasn't spread the kind of. And I got the question, "Oh, will you deal with this?" I was like, "Well, we're dealing with mass media here. It must be some kind of people taking that people will." Be able to read it. Now it's only against one person who has asked the question. So I think that the damage or the harm isn't, when it's not spread, it's not the media ethical issue really.
Interesting. And that sort of points to the sort of fragmentation of the entire discussion, which in itself is harmful for the community. But I guess that's...
It could be. But I don't mean that there almost must be a human being checking everything. You have processes that checks it. I mean, you have tools that check it, and yeah.
We're almost out of time, but I just want to ask you all really. I mean, we can start with you, Aimee. Journalism as a profession, as a practice, as a career choice, doesn't have a great reputation at the moment, we could say. And so in the context of everything that we've been discussing this evening, how do we explain the value of journalism to the public in future?
Yeah, I think about this a lot because I teach boot camps at universities across the US. And this generation in college right now is very skeptical about AI. They talk a lot about the environmental toll, which is real, but is not the reason to avoid it. And what I'm trying to do to get them to take these trainings is to explain to them that we're talking about the 4 biggest companies the world has ever known. NVIDIA became like a $4 trillion company last week. There is so much reporting that needs to be done around these companies that are quickly becoming not just AI companies, but energy companies. And if you don't understand how these systems work, you cannot speak truth to power. So I think if anybody has ever been motivated with that, I'll just say antagonistic approach to life, where you're constantly asking those hard questions, wanting to help other people understand this, I think that is the thing that if I were a student in school right now, I would be very excited to want to dig in. There's countless business stories, environmental stories, education stories that can be molded around this topic, and those stories really need to be broken. But if you fold your arms and pretend that this is something that you can sit out and that you don't have to understand it, then the society will be less informed. So we need people thinking about this from every aspect, whether it's experimenting with the tools directly or really looking at the infrastructure, how is it built? And then what is our possibility to do participatory technology? How can we come together and not just accept these tools as they've been given? If there is a real promise of AI at all, it's that we are now all vibe coders. We are all now able to be technologists, and we don't have to accept the tools as they are.
Kristoffer, do you have a comment? How do we explain the value of journalism to the public in the context of...
I think, I mean, I agree with a lot that was said earlier. Do good journalism. That's the most important thing. And then the transparency bit about it has become more complicated now. I don't think there is a quick fix for this, but one thing I've been pushing for many years now is the need for sound media critical discussions. This is something that is lacking in today's both political and journalistic landscape, because it's marked, you said journalists have a bad reputation, and that is tied into whole political discourse, which places journalism as an institution, you know, in bed with the elites and so on. It's part of a whole populist kind of worldview. And I think it would be good to sort of find some way of internally having good critical discussions about the content. I mean, I think the BBC story recently highlighted this in quite a dramatic fashion, that there was obviously a lack of internal structures to kind of, where somebody should have said, don't do that. Nobody said that. So these kind of procedures, I think, could be thought about. There also needs to be public discussions about this. But I mean, yeah, so I'll leave it at that. But those are my two thoughts.
Yeah, Martin, for you, it's a business question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that we could do is more, as you were in, like show, don't tell. A lot of times we are... we do campaigns and we say, you know, journalism is important and democracy dies in darkness and da da da. We could probably do less of that and maybe show a little bit more. And I also think that this kind of technological shift is also a very good opportunity to rethink what's our value, and not like how should we explain it, but what is it? And it's maybe if, you know, the world's largest companies, they take journalism and then they scrape our websites and they summarize it in 3 bullet points and then they publish it on their own. Maybe we should do journalism that cannot be easily summarized in 3 bullet points. That's probably the best answer. So, and because that will add value. Maybe the value 10 years ago, or I don't know, was to when there's a new interest rate coming out from the Federal Reserve here in Sweden, or the bank, that was a value that we kind of took that number and sent it out to the audience. And that could still be a small part of it, but it's not our core business.
Thanks. I think, as we all know, ChatGPT can summarize anything in 3 bullet points. But Caspar, have the final word before we open up to the audience.
I think that the need for trustworthy, quality journalism, fact-check journalism, is bigger than ever. It's a complex world. We have war, we have disinformation, we have the rise of populism, we have the efforts to undermine the established institutions, not at least the media institutions. And in that world, and also with AI, I think trustworthy journalism has a great place and is more needed than ever. That's one thing. And the second thing is what you said, Martin. If we do these amazing stories, this amazing investigative journalism, stories and interviews and investigative journalism that AI tools can't do, then we can keep on going. I think that is important too.
So keep teaching the students to pick up the phone and ask the difficult questions.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you very much. How do we do questions here? Do we have? We can maybe wander around the microphone. Does anybody have a question? Oh, that's easy. We can start there.
My question is around legislation. So you talked about accountability, and obviously that's super important.
You need to talk about. Speak up.
I'll talk louder. Okay, sorry. My question is about legislation. So you'll all come at it from different angles, and different jurisdictions as well. Where do you feel that, from a legislation point of view, we're lacking? And what would be your ask tomorrow if we could wave a magic wand on our politicians? Sorry.
I think the media in Sweden are widely protected within the constitution. I mean, we have the Tryckfrihetsförordningen from 1766, and we have YGL, and we have this constitution that protects the media in Sweden in a great way, I think. So in general, I don't think there's a need for new legislation to protect us. Maybe public service should be more protected because they have some issues with politicians going in and trying to steer the business there. That may be something that should be I think the legislature should look at. But otherwise, I think, I mean, it's so fundamental in the Swedish society and within the Swedish constitution that we should have the freedom of the press. So, yeah.
Aimee, do you want to give an American perspective on that?
I do, because I feel like we have been historically under-regulated or no regulation at all in the US when it comes to technology, and our footprint around the globe is massive. We have such an impact around the global south and other places around the world that really are just receivers of this information or receivers of this technology. They didn't ask for it, and yet their whole information streams are being overtaken by it. So the US has not expressed an interest to have any kind of regulation, any kind of guardrails or protections for its people and the world. But it really has to start with that. I know Europe is doing a lot. The European Union is doing a lot in terms of trying to bring some guardrails and protections to its citizens. But it really has to start at the origin story of all of these technology companies, and that resides in the US. They should not be able to bring tools to market that have not been tested thoroughly and red teamed. They should not be able to have this race to an end goal. And I would like to see the US government have a larger role in creating its own AI products. Again, not to compete with the technology companies, but just to have some type of government offering to sit side by side these and to bring some accountability, I would think. So I'm a little, I hope it doesn't come off as too frustrated, but I would like to see more happening in the US, but that's been 25 plus years in the making.
So I just want to add, I was asking about protecting the media. If you mean legislation that prevents the big tech companies to come in and eat us all, I don't know. I think there's a lot going on within the EU, but I can't, that's not really my subject. We have EMFA and all this new legislation to protect the media. I don't know if it's enough.
Maybe you have a comment? We move on to the next.
Well, I don't know. My view on this is, I mean, I'm a free speech guy, and I'm a big fan of auto-regulation system. I think the power should keep as far away as possible from regulating news and views, because it's essential to have a high roof in public discourse. Otherwise, democracy is in question, I think. But if I could wish for anything, I think is what I mentioned earlier. We need to talk about how to protect the kids. Their childhood have been stolen. And we need to have a more serious discussion about what we could do that, and maybe even discuss legislations that force the big platforms to be accountable. But that's besides the news and views discourse from my part.
Thanks. Any other questions? Do you want to shout it out and then we can repeat it? I don't even know if these microphones are working. Is anybody? Or do you? Okay. What the hell? Take a microphone. I think it's for the people online.
Hi. Thank you for the non-panel for the discussion. I saw this movie yesterday. It's called Mountainhead. Quite bizarre comedy, but I do recommend it, and it connects to my question actually. So, how can we equip journalists or news houses with the right tools or knowledge to combat a internet filled with deepfake videos being published at the speed of light in this post-OpenAI Sora type of future that will come?
We heard yesterday that, I guess you heard the question, but we heard yesterday that 4 years ago it cost $50,000 to set up a news site and populate it with a sort of reasonable amount of content. Today you can do it for $105 in an hour. So in that context, where do the media companies?
I just think that the media companies must do this, and that they must invest money in fact-checking even more than they have already done, because they need to sort out what is deepfake from what is reality and so on. That's part of the trustworthiness that has been talking so much about. And if you can't do that, you really have no right to exist. So I think it's about exactly how to do it and what technique you should use. Maybe Martin, you're more better to talk about that.
Yeah, I think that in one way remains to be seen, because we've heard there's a lot of answers to this, but we've heard for many years that this like tsunami of fake news is going to come, and everybody's going to be tricked and all. But we haven't really seen that yet. At least I don't think so in a Swedish perspective. I think that this discussion has been harmful, actually, also because people don't trust anything, because they're constantly told that it's so much fake news everywhere. It's everywhere. Maybe it is, but I don't think that's, at least in the context of news media, we haven't seen that much of that. That we have published fake videos, and that happens a little bit, but not to the extent that maybe you can imagine when you hear the debate. The other part is that we have had some internal classes in fact checking and how do you expose deepfakes, and the problem is that it's very hard to do that. And I think that here we have to kind of maybe go back a little bit to the journalistic processes that we've had for a long time, and they are, at least now, they are pretty good. I would say that you make a phone call. First you think, okay, is this even reasonable? Has this? You make phone calls, you try to verify, to check it. So these kind of old school methods are actually working quite well, at least now. But yes, we probably do have to invest. We probably have to come together, because it's very expensive to invest in this technology as well. And the last point I want to make is that I think that a while ago, maybe a journalist saw it as her responsibility to kind of stand for truth everywhere. And I don't think that's possible anymore, because it's so, as you say, it's so easy and cheap and fast to create fake content. So we cannot be like all over the internet and like, this is false, this is false. We can only be responsible for what we publish. Like, we have to do our own news evaluation. If there is a deep fake or whatever it is, any type of false content, AI or not, has a lot of impact. We have to fight, but we cannot do as we did in the early days of internet, where we tried to kind of vacuum clean the whole internet to find the fake stuff and say, oh, it's fake, because it's everywhere.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that, because I agree completely. I've been sort of irritated with this whole fake news avalanche of things, and also fact checking. I mean, those are good initiatives and necessary to some extent, but it's always the favorite two quick fixes to a huger problem. Throw some fact checking on it, throw some media literacy at it. That's the only solution that I've heard now for 10 years to these kind of questions that we just got. What I think is we need to invest in human subjects as democratic subjects, and the most important thing is that people develop literacy. Bracket out the media, because the media is going to be there. The technology is there. It's going to be, but you have to develop an epistemological outlook on life. You have to have your own way of verifying and understanding how things can be true, and how you can reach that. Also, from a moral perspective, we need to spend time on classic education, where people get the chance to develop, a philosophically sound outlook on life, and also ground their own ideological preferences and so on. That's the only way that's going to vaccinate people against attempts to sway their opinions and so on. The need for orientation will always make people vulnerable. So, I mean, and politicians don't like to hear that, because that costs a lot of money, and it's going to take many years, but I think if there is a big problem, I think that part is left behind to some extent, and and we also risk exaggerating threats, which makes people scared and so on, and also people have incentives to do that, because they can get a lot of money to do projects to fix this problem. Short comment.
Yeah. So before I came to AP, I worked for an NGO called First Draft, and we train journalists how to identify, verify, and report on information online. That work is now fed into building a dashboard of tools for AP called AP Verify, where we hope to make people who don't consider themselves, OSINT investigators or even UGC investigators to think critically about the work that they do and also show their steps. What I like fact checks, they're fine, but I think it can get a little school marmish with I told you about these facts. And why I like verification instead is it literally shows you this. Here's the steps I took to get to this result. And if you don't believe me, try it yourself. So it can operate as a transparency mechanism, but also as a training tool for the public. And I was really heartened. I don't know if you remember, probably 18 months ago, Princess Kate had a photo that was circulated that had been manipulated by, they were calling it legacy manipulation with Photoshop. And boy, the public came out to explain exactly where and how that image was manipulated. And I felt like there were so many armchair OSINT experts suddenly, that it's that critical thinking that people that really people engaged with on that topic. And what was really great to see is people want to and think that they can tell these things, and maybe if they have tools like AP Verify, especially journalists have tools like AP Verify, that they would also feel confident that they could get to the origin story of a piece of information online.
Thanks. Yeah, question here.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm very interested in international contexts, and I don't want to go in polemic with you, but in Eastern Europe, for example, you talk about media today and AI as a part of the civic defense, how it is a threat, and what is the role of media in addressing that threat. And we have an election soon in Sweden, as they do in Armenia. And the two last times, we had a clear correlation between activity and political parties on social media and success in the parliament. So I would like to hear a little bit about what you, who knows about AI and media use, and from a company perspective, what is your plan for this? What is your role and what is your plan?
Yeah, I mean, and when we were talking here was also from a Swedish context, in Sweden we don't see that. We don't see that correlation. Maybe yet, or maybe we're not going to see it. I don't know. But I think also that what you're talking about is very important, that there are other, sometimes when we talk about fake news, for example, and disinformation, that also kind of takes the responsibility away from the person who is spreading it, because that's what politicians, they've been doing that for forever. And it's easier now. But my point was that it's this, I read that they were going to shut down the library on public service, and I don't know if that's a good idea. Probably not. But the person who was responsible for it said, it's so much fake news out there. Like, you use it all the time in every discussion, that as a reason for everything, basically. But to your question, I think it has more to do with trust in each other, and that's something that you can also see erode a little bit thanks to this fake news discussion that we talk so much about, disinformation, that you can actually see that people don't trust each other, like not only news, they don't trust each other that much longer either. So I think that's like bigger. It's a bigger question, I think, than only news media and fake news, and maybe not the answer you were.
Caspar, do you have an answer or a comment around the psychological defense aspect of media?
No, not really, because I don't work with that at all. But I believe that just one thing you can state is that the trust in the Swedish media companies, the trust is great, I would say. We always talk. we always talk about, oh, no one trusts media anymore, we have no trust. Well, if you look at the numbers from Gothenburg University, the trust in public service, for example, is great. I don't know the numbers really, but 70-80% trusts SR and SVT, and the trust for the local newspapers are also very high. So I think it's a little bit dangerous when we always talk about this, mistrust, when in fact the trusts still are so high, and it's been kept high since the 70s. So when internet came and everything, we thought that no one will trust the media anymore. Well, the trust still is very, very high.
Okay, thanks. So one more question. I thought we would keep going until she came back in with the wine, but it seems she's waiting outside till we finish. So we're in a terrible situation. But is there one more question here? James?
Yeah, I guess this is mostly a question for Martin, but maybe others have a perspective on it as well. We're just talking about trust, and coming on from that, you've got your chatbot on Aftonbladet. Public service companies in Europe just did a survey or an experiment where they tested chatbots just trained on their own material, and they said, I think the number was 41% of the answers that came back had significant problems. They made up quotes, they made up other stuff, or they misrepresented things, misunderstood things. And you also came up with that example there that you were discussing earlier about something in Aftonbladet that had given sort of some fairly crazy answers about someone being a rapist. With the increased adoption of these, isn't there a risk that even if they don't break the rules and the self-regulation that we've got, that these chatbots have a risk diminishing trust in the media? And how do we prevent that? How do you prevent that?
I mean, first of all, that rapist thing had nothing to do with Aftonbladet. Okay. So, I mean, I think Hey Aftonbladet now has answered almost 7 million questions. We haven't seen a single hallucination or factual errors. If I spell a word wrong in Aftonbladet, I'll get 100 emails saying that, do you have to be an idiot to work for Aftonbladet? So, and we haven't fact checked all 7 million, but we have fact checked a lot of them. And up to this day, we haven't had a single case yet. So that remains to be seen. I think that the biggest learning working with AI projects so far is that it's not a rocket science, but quality is everything. So if you ask someone, should we use AI? If you ask the audience, they're going to say, probably not. But if you give them a chatbot that works, they will use it. They might not love it, but they will use it. They will just see it as a part of our offering or services. Same goes for a journalist. Like, most journalists say, we should probably not use AI, or at least they used to say that. But okay, but here's a transcription tool that will save you hours of work. Okay, great, I'll use it. They might love that, actually. No, I would say if you do good products, that's good for trust. If you do bad products, it's bad. AI or not AI.
Aimee, do you want to make a final comment there?
Yeah, it comes down to good products, and I think that the rise of the product teams in newsroom equal to possibly the editorial. It's just going to be really important to be able to give audiences an experience that they can trust, that they can engage with. It's clear the Aftonbladet chatbot is successful. US examples of that have not been as successful, but I do think it's clear through the interactivity and the popularity of a tool like ChatGPT, the public wants answers to questions that they have. And oftentimes newsrooms don't deliver that. We deliver nuance, we deliver context, but sometimes not just the facts. And it's clear there's an appetite in the public for that.
I just want to say we have done bad things as well. That has been bad for trust.
On which note, we'll wind up. And I mean, it's impossible to summarize this discussion. It's absolutely fascinating. I guess the takeaway is that the technology is changing the craft of journalism, but not the mission of journalism. So maybe we'll take that. So thank you very much, Aimee, Martin, Caspar, and Kristoffer.
Great to present. Thank you. Bye.